You are listening to the Waking Up to Purpose podcast with Lily Badcock in association with lilybadcock.com. What if every challenge you've ever faced was for a purpose? What if every perceived failure was in fact you stepping ever closer to the life you were born to live? I'm Lily Badcock, and I'm here to let you know that you were born with a divine purpose in your heart. And you're here because you know that's true. The process of awakening can be tough. Fired up and inspired one minute and then overwhelmed and lost the next. I've created this podcast to share with you every aspect of my own journey to purpose, as well as the stories of others who have walked the same path. Fear and doubt can place a lot of uncertainty in our minds, but here's what's true. You are needed. Your story matters. Wake up. Rise up. Together we can. And the thing I'm very passionate about is what was amazing to see after Caroline was the uprising of the slogan, Be Kind, and the amount of people that got behind the idea that you have to just be kind. And it was so heartwarming for like a minute. And then a little bit of time passed, a tiny bit of time. And for so many people, it's yesterday's news. It's the same people that were posting Be Kind a week previously were back to yelling at each other and calling names and whatever. And now we're in this situation now where obviously a black man has been murdered. There's no other way to put it. And it's caused this discussion to happen around racism, which has been so long overdue and so needed. But yet again, what I'm seeing is in amongst all of the posts that are so powerful and really have the power to create some change, in amongst all of that, there's bickering and there's bullying, and there's still this idea of you don't agree with me and I don't agree with you and I'm gonna take down. And again, the same people that were saying be kind are not remembering those words.
If you look at this year, Caroline passed away in February. Lockdown happened. You know, it's not even halfway through the year, and Black Lives Matters. It matters. It's taking, amazing movement forward. So much has happened in people's lives, and it's not even halfway through 2020. So I think it's easy to write things online. It's easy to change your status with the heading Be Kind, and you're suddenly supposed to be seen as being kind. Yeah. You could be impacted and affected by Caroline's death, and so many people that I know that did know her, it touched them, which was great to see. But then, because they're now talking about racism or something else that isn't as impactful on their lives as hearing about a woman who entered their living room through their screens and they felt they knew, and suddenly she took her own life. And it's like, I wonder how many people that are shocked about that actually read and clicked on to the articles that were happening. Laugh at the Valentine's card that was created days before. So, how many people read the story, had an opinion on it, believed it, spoke about it to their friends in the office or on the phone. So suddenly you then have, well, this isn't about Caroline Flack. This isn't about being kind. This is something totally different. Well, no, Be Kind isn't just Caroline. It's a reflection on you as a person, and asking and pleading with other people to behave in the same way. And suddenly you then have the conversations I've seen with Black Lives Matter, i.e., why is this new to people? Why is racism new to people? It's suddenly like, and then it's, oh, how dare you think that I could be racist? It's not
Mm.
saying that you are. It's saying, well, not being racist isn't enough. It's being anti-racist. Stand
Yeah.
up. You have a voice.
Yeah.
Why is suddenly the fact that there is such a thing as white privilege? Why has that been news shock and horror? And okay, there is white privilege, but use that white privilege to do something. That's not saying that, we can't be equal. And it's so emotive because people who thought racism didn't impact them are suddenly being looked upon as in, well, what are you going to do about it as a white person? And people who live in a village where they probably haven't seen a black person, they haven't even seen a minority ethnic person, suddenly be like, it's not my problem.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, why am I being called to do something when it isn't my issue? But in order to get rid of it, we need to educate ourselves. And you see the people online that say, look, I don't understand, but I stand with people. I want to learn. I want to do something about this. What can I do? I'm willing to be vulnerable, have the raw conversations. And Piers Morgan said this as in, he hasn't seen action like this being taken for a very long time. So he believes this is going to lead to real change. But it can only do that if we're standing united rather than feeling victimized and saying, you're calling me out, and I'm not that, rather than saying, okay, I didn't know it was an issue.
Yeah.
But it's like, why is this Sunday news? And people are thinking this doesn't happen. And it's not just an American issue. Yeah, okay, it happened in America. Things may be harsh in America because it's such a bigger place.
Exactly, it's huge.
But in terms of institutionalized racism and the police and Stephen Lawrence, that was UK.
Right.
That was London,
Yeah.
It happens in boroughs. I had a friend who said, her brother is white, hung around, was the only person in a group of black boys, but never, probably did worse things than his friends, never got arrested at 14, never picked up, and it's women, black women saying they're being told not to be as vocal in the office because they're seen as aggressive.
Yeah. There's so much that's come out. I know for me, I mean, I actually think a big part of this was it's never been taught to us, and it should have been. Like, this is the thing for me, like, I've grown up believing that racism is when you are horrible to somebody or mean to somebody because of the color of their skin. Like, that's what I was brought up believing racism was. So when I first started hearing about this thing called white privilege, I was offended by it, which is exactly what white privilege is, right? We make it all about us, and we're like, oh, how dare you call me that? That's not me. I'm not that. I would never, like, and quite rightly, people are saying, but I would never treat somebody poorly because of the color of their skin. Good, nor should you. But it's understanding that there's so much more to it than we've ever realized. And the sad thing is, it hasn't been through lack of black people trying to educate us. It's literally been our own ignorance and our own inability to open our ears and to listen and to learn. And it's tragic that it would take something this horrific. But I agree with what you said, Piers Morgan said. It really feels like there is change, because even though there's still a large proportion of people who are just bickering and arguing online about what's right and what's wrong to say, underneath that, there are a lot of people, I think now, who are really taking a look and going, oh, okay, no, I get it. I really get it. That's how I've definitely felt like that this week. I understand that it's time for me to just be quiet on it and learn as much as I can, and really campaign for the change. And it's not about, oh, that doesn't apply to me because I would never do that. Well, it was our ancestors that started it. It's up to us to make that change, and no one set of people can do it on their own. Like you say, it's about unifying, and it's about, you know, coming together as much as we can to create this change.
But also you know, when you say about it's so embedded, it's probably, you know, I remember it being highlighted to me with my mum saying, when someone calls you, why are they calling you the black sheep of the family? Why is it a black sheep? It's negative.
Yeah.
There's a black cloud over me. Why black? Why is black seen as negative? No, so it's been embedded. Barbara, black sheep, you know. So when you then see in terms of the language that's being used, and it's, you know, countries were built on being colonized and the white privileged, and what the whole history of it, I don't understand it, you know, as well. And I put it on my Facebook status in terms of the conversations that were happening. I was hearing the words people of color, and I thought, well, white is a color as well,
right?
You know, so why when people refer to people of color, why are they not talking about you, Lily? Why is it about me? And you know, when I was growing up, it's not used as much now, but the colored person. But actually now that's been seen as wrong. You don't say the colored person, you say black or brown. So in terms of calling someone black, that's not offensive. However, it sits better with people to call someone a person of color rather than black. And it's the education, because we don't get taught at school. We get taught algebra and we never use algebra again in our adult life, but we don't get told what books to read. Our curriculum, GCSE curriculum, doesn't include about Black history, about slavery. Slavery is just something we get mentioned about, but what about the impact of that? What about having tools, resources available to us as we read Animal Farms? What about having plays put on that we watch? Where are these resources? And why is it up to Black people to educate white people? And it's, you know, I have friends that would say, well, hang on a minute, it's not my job to educate you. I've been talking about it all my life. This is not new to us. You know, find your feet about it. So I think, you know, even their phrases and terminology, call people what they are, you know. And when people say I don't see color, and I had a friend of mine that commented saying I was really enjoying this status and agreeing with it, and then until you said I'm brown, as in me, I'm black, and she goes, I didn't see your color. And I was like, okay, is this people? And I had to question it. It's people. I've heard the term, people say I don't see color. I'm like, how? You know, if I had really nice eyebrows, and when they get threaded, people say, I really like your eyebrows, they're really nice. You see me. By saying you don't see my colour, well, I find that quite offensive, because we're not, you know, there's so much for equality, but see people's colour rather than just saying, I don't see it. Part of me thinking, well, when you say I don't see colour, is that you saying I treat everyone equal, which is absolutely fine, but don't not see us for what we are, because we're colour that comes history, heritage, richness, and
something to be proud of, something that you want people to see. You don't want it to be overlooked. I think what's going to come about, if it hasn't already, is this big kind of hole in the middle, because from, like you've just explained how that is offensive, and how and hearing it like that, it's like, of course that's offensive. But I know that people say I don't see colour because they think that's the right thing to say, and that's how ingrained it is, because they think it's almost like going, oh, let's just pretend that that's not there. That's how it is, isn't it? But it's when people are saying that, they don't realise that that's what they're saying. They don't even realise the power of of that statement they're making and how offensive it can be. And I think that's where,
it's a bit like in the office, you know, everyone comes back, my friends come back, and I pick them up when it happens, when I hear about it. They come off holiday and say, oh gosh, you're nice and brown. And I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm nice and brown all year round. No one says anything about that. You notice somebody else is turned brown. Hang on, what about me every day? You know, and it's kind of a joke. And I know when I've been in an office environment, if somebody isn't used to or comfortable talking about tea, now I make rubbish tea, but when I've been told to make tea, I'm like, oh, and especially when there's a load of people, I'm like, okay, what colour do you want it? Do you want it my colour, so-and-so's colour, my colour? I've been on holiday. It's like, you can see the visible uncomfortableness. And it took me a while, because I'm like, of course you would see my colour, but they don't know how to respond to that. Because they're like, oh, you're pointing out something I will never talk to you about. But hang on a minute, you know, when I say, and I have a line when people say, when I've done interviews, where can people find you from? I was like, well, if you can't find me on Google, your internet's broken. You know, my name is different. It's not Joe Blogs. It's not something that you typically hear. So when people are like, well, where's that from? Or, you know, when people say to my mum was born in Nottingham, you know, when people say, where are you from? And she goes, oh, Nottingham. No, where are you from? Oh, okay, Meadows in Nottingham. Like, where? And it's like, oh, okay, your heritage. You know, they would never use the language to ask that. Or they would say to her, oh, I bet you're used to this weather, aren't you, when it's sunny? And it's like, oh, well, it's not any sunnier in Nottingham.
God, I mean, it's going to be a long, hard road, I think, and there's going to be a lot of stumbling, and I just think it's remaining open and willing to learn, and being willing to be wrong as well, and to be apologetic when you realise that you've made a mistake, and not get butthurt about it, and not go, oh, well, then what's the point? Like, that's what I'm seeing a lot of online this week, is a lot of people going, oh, well, I put a post up and then I got told it was wrong, so what's the point? Like, I'll just give up. No, don't give up. You made a good start. Don't ruin it now. Learn. Say sorry.
I think that's a really, really good point in terms of getting it wrong. So when we start a business, we're not an expert. We're not supposed to know everything about starting a business, because we're wearing so many different hats. So it's why it's acceptable you making mistakes in business. So you doing, I don't know, Facebook adverts, for example. Why are you allowed to make mistakes in that? Something you don't know about. However, you're not allowed to make mistakes when it comes to talk about such an important subject. You're not supposed to. If you've never had an Asian, a Black, a Chinese friend, or any other minority ethnic, why are you suddenly supposed to know how to, if you grew up and there was just white people that you came across, and the only exotic thing you did was go to holiday to, I don't know, Thailand, or so, you know, or you would have Chinese takeaway, you know, and food. Or the only Black person you will see is when you switch on the TV or the movies. Why are you supposed to know? Be curious, be willing to find out. And I think, and also, I think from people who are not white, we need to be a bit willing to educate and enlighten and speak of our experiences, because it's okay saying that this has been our history, but ultimately what we want people to do is learn what it, and I can't sit here and say I've experienced racism, because if I had, I don't know, it's not been as difficult. But maybe that's because I've never taken the time to look at what opportunities I didn't get. You know, I remember my mum saying, if I'd been at an event or something, oh, were you the only brown person? I thought, I don't know, you know, and it's having to think like that. And that's what I've been brought up thinking, well, actually, maybe I need to be as well mindful in the industry I work in or worked in, and the workforce be more open about it, because I can't say it's impacted me hugely. And if it has, I probably haven't been aware of it. And it's interesting to look back and think, I know stories from my grandparents, from my mum, how it's impacted, but we need to be kinder.
Yeah, I think it's a difficult one, isn't it? Because I do get what you're saying, and I think there definitely maybe could be some tolerance, but I also think that, like, as a white person, because I'm educating myself and I'm starting to see like what it's all about, I really get why you might not want to be tolerant. I really get why, like you said, why is this news to anyone? Like, this has always been here. Like, why are people acting like it's just the kind of popular thing to talk about this week? And it isn't that. It's so much deeper rooted than that. And so I definitely think there needs to be some tolerance on both sides. There's going to be mistakes made. There's also, like, when you come away from the colours black and white, you've then got all of the shades of types of people as well. Like, you know, there are good-hearted people that want good in the world, and then there are people in the world that don't want that as well. And there's so many nuances. And I just think no one can expect that this is just going to all go away. Certainly, we're not going to go back to where we were. This has definitely been an awakening, I think, on a global scale that we're seeing, because more people are being willing to get this education that maybe last week they didn't realise they even needed, right? They didn't even realise it was something they needed to know. It's my hope that we can keep moving forward, and that gap is going to get smaller and smaller, and it's going to take some understanding on both sides, I think, that you know. And so, like, as a white person, if I say something and it makes another person angry, like if I say something that makes a black person or a brown person angry, I can't then get defensive about that and throw it all up in the air and go, what's the point? I've got to ask myself, why has that made you angry? I don't understand. I'm going to go and find out now, and I apologize, right? And there's work to be done. It's not, we've got to stop being so reactive.
And you've got to know the place it's come from.
Totally.
You know,
yeah.
But when you say it like that, it's very different to if you said it in black and white on Facebook and people read the words and interpreted with their own meaning. If they heard your tone, the place you were coming from, it would be very different. And it also would be different if you and I were having a conversation as we are, where we can see each other's reaction and hear the voices. Whereas if it was on in black and white, we put our own interpretation, and it's easy to do on an emotive subject, because I think a lot of black people are feeling heard, and when they're feeling heard, it brings up all the things that they've suppressed, like going to work on a daily basis, realizing they can't be as loud because of how they've been viewed, or hiding. I've heard the time hiding their blackness. Well, how are you to hide your blackness? Because it's, you know, but it's no, in terms of how I behave, and that's tiring. And when you've got people who are just feeling finally heard, you know what it's like when you've had when you've been fighting a campaign. It could be anything. It could be, I don't know, equal rights in marriages, or whatever it may be, and you finally feel heard. It then brings up, and especially if you're tired and it's been a fight, it brings up emotions.
Completely,
And like you said, it's tolerance on both fronts, and it's leading with that, with something that will actually change, rather than be for the sake of it because it's popular, like the Be Kind
Totally. Yeah. I think for me personally, and I can only speak for myself, but how I have felt this week is I understand. I don't want to say I understand the tiredness. I don't understand the tiredness, but I literally hung out in a Facebook group for like an hour yesterday, and I felt exhausted trying to explain to person after person after person after person why what they were writing wasn't the right thing, and why what they were writing was short-sighted. And you know, I immediately felt like, to me, it was like this battle has been ongoing for my entire life, but I just arrived at the battlefield. So there are warriors on the battlefield who are now tired, that can't even stand, and I'm here fresh with my energy, and I don't really understand, but there's a sword in my hand and I'm willing to swing it. So let me stand with you, let me swing the sword. Like, if I'm swinging it in the wrong direction, you'll tell me. But it really feels like I want to be the strength for people who've been fighting this whole time in and not being heard. It's been like silence. They've been screaming and not being heard. And now I feel like, as a white woman, I have this ability to amplify their voice, and I'm willing to do that, and I know others are willing to do that too. And I think, you know, I've said it already on my social media, and I'll say it here again now in case anybody's listening. I welcome anybody onto this podcast that wants to have these conversations. I think the way forward is to have these conversations. I almost want to say, like, this is how it is. This is how it's been as a white woman. And how has it been for you? And why is that wrong? And how do we fix that? Like, it's not going to change if we just dance around the subjects and go, oh, well, that was okay. Like, no, it's not okay. Let's just be really honest about, what have you grown up believing, either as a black woman or a white woman, because it's going to be different. And to bring those two together, we have to hear it on both sides and then see how we bring that together. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. And I think we're already seeing it.
Yeah.
And people are realizing it's not just on Blackout Tuesday that people put black squares on. It's, you know, there's still conversation going. And it did make me think, was this a social media exercise, you know, and was it trendy, so people did it? What would happen on the back of that? And when you get newsletters from people, when you get links to resources and the conversation carrying on, you think, actually, I think this is not just tokenism, because, you know, I've heard black friends say, oh yeah, I'm just a token black person. I tick a box for them, being in that circle, and that's why I've been chosen.
Yeah, and I think in some cases they're probably right. I hate to say it. I do think in some cases they're probably right. I just hope that can change. I believe it can. But yeah, it's having these conversations, and I think you're right. I do think a lot of the black squares on Blackout Tuesday probably were tokenism. I think that, how did someone describe it? It was like performing, and there's a lot of performance. But maybe that's okay. Like, maybe even from performance, change can happen. Even if somebody initially is doing it because they just think it's the right thing to do, it's still a step, and maybe that will then lead them to start following up some of what they've been talking about. You know, we have to hope that that's how it's going to be.
I think that's probably really idealistic looking. I mean, if it is, and I know I've seen a couple of stuff, then it's never been mentioned again. It hadn't been mentioned before. This wasn't what happened Tuesday, it happened last week. So when you think you're then doing it because Beyonce is probably doing it as a music, you know, or you're seeing a sea of black on your feed, and you don't want to be the only one who puts a selfie that's filtered to the eyeballs. And but what are you doing after that? You know, so you can say, oh, maybe they did it and they're looking into it. It's really hard to believe that when you don't hear them talking about it, and they have a voice. It's not like they don't use social media to talk and do Facebook Lives and Insta stories. You can hear that. And what I've valued is people who have been brave enough to get it wrong and say, I don't know, what do I do? How can I learn? And when that conversation stops at a black square, I think that's damaging, because it's almost like I want to be seen to do the right thing rather than not. And I think it's a bit like the post I put up, which I loved. It was followed up, and it was an actual talking point about, don't put with your sea of black on Blackout Tuesday, don't put Black Lives Matter, because what I was doing and a weekend even educating myself, I heard black coaches who then had a voice on Instagram, or I was able to follow the hashtag that would lead me to something else. I couldn't on Tuesday. When I continued to do it, all I could see were these influential people. There were, and I'm not saying it was done for the trend. I do believe they were standing. It just kind of, the reason it was created was to amplify black voices, and that on Tuesday wasn't as happening because people didn't realize it was ignorant. It's, and it's kind of like, let's go now, follow the hashtag and see what resources it leads to. BBC radio shows have done fantastic conversations about, a white woman being very brave coming onto a radio station and speaking to a black DJ and saying, big black men scare me. When would we ever have heard that?
No, and actually we wouldn't have done, and at one point it would have been not PC to even say that. Like, there's definitely been an element of that for a while. It's like, we can't even say that because you'll be taken down or whatever. Like, there's been a disconnect there. I think the point you've just made about those black squares on social media brings us all the way back to what we were saying before about how people just share things blindly and they don't look into what they're sharing and why. It's this social media trend of very surface level. Oh, what are we doing? Oh, black squares, cool. Yeah, I'll whack one of them up. What's that all about? Like, and it's the same, isn't it, with even news and, going back to the trolling even. This is half the problem. People are not taking responsibility for the voice they have online. They're not taking responsibility for the links that they're sharing. They are not trying to understand why they're even doing something. It's I've heard the term sheeple, where, like, everyone is just doing what everyone else is doing. And maybe now people can start to think, right, so what, why am I sharing this? What's the actual aim of this? The aim is not to put a black square on Instagram. There's a reason we're doing this. What's the reason? And you made the good point, it was to amplify the voices, and maybe on Tuesday it actually had the reverse effect because people just wanted to be seen as doing the right thing. And then, and obviously we got that wrong, but I think that's being highlighted. So hopefully moving forward, the right hashtags can be used and the right intent can come through. We said this was going to be a multi-layered episode, and I feel like we can go on, and I feel like we will go on. I certainly feel very committed to the cause of speaking about this online trolling, online bullying, online etiquette just as a whole, because for our own mental well-being, I feel like the conversation needs to be had, and on all the levels as well. It's not even about the bullying, and even putting that aside, even just the action of scrolling social media and allowing yourself to believe that what you're seeing is fact, and that and then comparing your life to the shiny shop front or whatever, it's having this detrimental effect.
Perhaps we need to do an experiment in terms of seeing how far a lie can be spread on social media. I can create a post on Canva and it can go wild if it's emotive enough. We saw it with Tom Moore, Captain Colonel Tom Moore, the work he was doing. And then suddenly it was like, oh, actually £3 million of his money is being taken by Just Giving. Well, actually, no. It's emotive enough, and it's like, we should never support Just Giving again. I'm never going to use it. Well, actually, how much of it was credit card fees? And then how much have they, paid the staff, but also donated it back to the fund.
Yeah, right.
fun. But that doesn't make a good news story.
Right.
The fact that you can create a image in Canva and it fit a particular narrative and it gets shared by people. I had it sent to me by somebody who I absolutely value, isn't into, you know, she's an older lady, she's not into social media trolling, she's in leadership. Suddenly she was sending me messages because it was easy to do so. You know, and maybe we should do like behind the scenes of creating maybe a less harmful version and seeing how far it gets spread before the truth then follows up. Because if you see something emotive on social media, you share it and it goes through.
Yeah, and that's the thing, isn't it? It's very reactionary on social media because people they have all the time in the world because they're spending hours and hours scrolling, and yet you feel like you don't have time. So it's scroll, like it, share it, gone. There's no thought process. I really like that idea. I think we should do it.
Yeah, like behind the scenes filming it, because and I was actually going to do with a client saying we in agreement saying that he'd been happily married and that his wife had left him, and then rather than it be followed as a truth, how quickly does it get spread? But it's got to be something that's not damaging. And
it's so hard, isn't it? And there'll be so many people that then don't follow up and find out that it wasn't the truth to begin with. They'll just go on, you know, and then at what point does it stop being shared? Because once it's out there, it's out there. It could come back years later and be shared around again. This is the problem with it, I suppose. Once it's out, it's there for life, isn't it?
You can't delete anything off the internet, and that's kind of what I tell people when they're going into fame. It's like, what's your social media footprint?
Right. Yeah, because it's coming back to bite you, whatever it is.
Yeah, especially when you go in the Big Brother house or the jungle. Yeah,
totally. Oh my goodness. Well, I feel like I need to let you go. We could spend hours and hours. Thank you so much for coming on. We're going to follow this up, like I said, with a series. I'm going to be putting that together. If there's anybody listening that has something to say about any of the topics that we've covered today, do get in touch with me. I would love to hear from you. We'll definitely have Maya back on very, very soon. And Maya, thank you so much for being on here.
Absolutely, pleasure, Lily. I've loved it. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Thanks everyone for listening. I'll be back again soon with another episode. Sending love. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to connect with me further and the awesome community that this podcast is creating, then come and join me in my free Facebook group, Wake Up, Rise Up. Every Friday, you can join me for a live Q&A in that group, and the links to do that are in the show notes for this episode. If you love the show, please leave me a comment and review on iTunes and share with anyone you know who might love it too. In the meantime, have an awesome day and keep shining. It's time.
And here we go. It's time for a cheesy sign off. Thank you so much for listening. If you'd like to join me and my awesome community in our free Facebook group, Wake Up, Rise Up, go and check out the link in the show notes below. Don't forget, every Friday you can join me in that group for a live Q&A, and I also stream that on Instagram. All of the links you'll need are in the show notes for this episode. If you loved the show, please go to iTunes, leave me a comment and a review, and share with anyone you know who might love it too. And in the meantime, have an awesome day and keep shining. It's time.